strangest thing happened on my way back from the ice machine.
What?
A man got out of his car, and he had a hood on so I couldn't see his face right away. But when he looked at me, I swear, he had bright yellow eyes.
Ugh, that audio was nasty, wasn't it? I mean, here we had set you up to think you were going to see something that looked like a movie. You know, we had good visuals, we really took care of the lighting, we had great actors, we had a good-looking set, everything was all in place, and then that audio was just horrible, and it really killed the whole experience, didn't it? Well, there's a reason why people say that audio is about 70% of what you see on the screen. It's because audio has a big impact in how we perceive the quality of something. So let's take another look at that scene, only this time we're going to have good audio.
The strangest thing happened on my way back from the ice machine.
What?
A man got out of his car, and he had a hood on so I couldn't see his face right away. But when he looked at me, I swear, he had bright yellow eyes.
Don't be ridiculous.
I'm not kidding. So I stopped by the car, and I got the axe, you know, just to be safe.
What are you going to do with that?
I'm gonna put it under the bed.
All right, that's more like it, isn't it? What we're going to do in this DVD, we're going to teach you everything that you need to know to be able to go from this...
And he had a hood on so I couldn't see his face right away.
...to this.
And he had a hood on so I couldn't see his face right away.
Now look, nothing screams amateur more than having bad audio in your production. You can have great lights, you can have great sets, you can have great acting, everything else, but if you got lousy audio, it's going to look like an amateur production. So what we're going to teach you in this DVD is how to avoid that. We're going to teach you common pitfalls to avoid. We're going to teach you 2 simple techniques that will get you very close to having great audio just by abiding by these 2 things. We're going to teach you things like different microphone types and different polar patterns and how to choose the right type of mic for a particular usage. We're going to talk about how to build an audio kit. We're going to talk about how to scout a location to choose one that is acoustically appropriate for getting good audio. And we're also going to teach you how to manage the audio once you get to that location. And then we'll teach you some post techniques that can sweeten the audio that you've recorded. Now, before we get into all that, let's take a look at some of the things that people do wrong when they're first starting out.
Sir, ready for inspection, sir?
Boy, where is your microphone? Where, boy?
Sir, right here, sir.
Not in my platoon, recruit. Do not show up to a professional shoot thinking you're going to use a built-in microphone. Only 2 kind of shows get recorded on built-in microphones. Home movies and, steers. Which are you shooting, boy? Drop and give me 20. What has you grinning like a, thing that grins?
Nothing, sir.
Where's your microphone, son?
It's right here, sir. Sir, I don't understand, sir. This is a Sennheiser 416, $1,000 microphone, sir.
I can see that. Are we shooting news?
Sir?
Are we shooting news?
No, sir. Film, sir.
Then get that microphone off the camera and up on a boom pole where it belongs. What are you laughing at?
The new recruit thinks it's okay to mount a microphone on the camera, sir.
That's right. You should laugh at him. Drop and give me 20. Drop and give me 20. Present, Mike! Proper windscreen, nice shotgun, XLR cable, professional boom pole. Not bad.
Thank you, sir.
You can't hear me.
Thank you, sir!
I said you can't hear me!
Sir? Sir,
How do you expect to record great audio if you're not even monitoring your audio?
You can't, sir.
Listen up, recruits. Take responsibility for your audio. Out here in the field, if your audio stinks, so does your film. Take the extra time, but get it right.
Sir, yes, sir.
Hey, Maggie, what do you think? Is this place great or what?
this is the senator's mansion shot?
You wanted a house? I got you a house. Now let's shoot something.
No, I told you we needed a rich-looking mansion for the daughter's wedding scene.
My cousin Nikki owns this joint. Said we could shoot here for free. Come on, let's shoot something.
Did you even read the script?
Hey, what are you complaining for? This was the best I could get. Come on, let's shoot something.
That shack was ugly, and you'd never want to shoot there. I mean, it was totally visually inappropriate, right? Well, that was a way of illustrating visually what can also happen in your audio. Just like we had a location that was visually inappropriate, you can also have locations that are inappropriate for recording good audio. I mean, if you got a room with bad acoustics, you can end up with audio that sounds like this.
Are you blaming my little brother? You know, he was only supposed to PA this thing. You guys made him the sound man after the money ran out.
Now, to show you how much impact just the acoustics of the room can have, we shot that same scene with the same actors, the same microphone, the same technique, everything exactly the same. The only difference is the location we used. And it sounds like this.
Are you trying to blame my little brother for this? Look, he only signed on to this thing as a PA.
Now, that's the kind of difference good acoustics can make. But it's not all just about acoustics. There's other things you have to factor in, too. I mean, let's take for an example, we had a shot of a beautiful actress. But as we zoom out, behind her, you can see that she's standing in front of a nasty, ugly junkyard. Kind of spoils the shot, doesn't it? Again, the same thing can happen with audio. You might have a good location, and you may be recording great dialogue in there, but then all sorts of noises can come in and kind of mess up and ruin the audio you're trying to record. So managing your location involves getting great acoustics, but it also involves making sure that there's no distracting sounds or trying to control those distracting sounds so that they don't ruin your shot. Always, always, always keep in mind what it is you're trying to accomplish. When you're recording audio for a film or video project, you're trying to record your actor's voice and nothing else. No background noise, no echo, no anything else, just a clear recording of your actor's voice. And we're going to teach you two techniques, what we call the two things that you have to employ in order to get great audio. These are two techniques that if you use these, they're going to make your job so much easier. These two techniques alone will probably get you 80% of the way towards getting fantastic audio. And those two things are, number one, get the mic in as close as you possibly can. And number two, choose a great audio-friendly location. Those two techniques are going to be more important than just about all the other things that you could do for getting great audio.
You heard the man, Slick. Just two things. Everything else is secondary.
And what about having a great microphone?
Secondary.
Building an audio kit?
Secondary.
BBGs?
Secondary.
DAT?
Secondary.
Mixer boards?
Secondary.
Everything?
Everything, Slick. Secondary.
And therefore, to achieve the best possible results, what you want to do is move the microphone as close as you can get it to your subject. Remember, every inch counts. Mr. Hayes.
Suppose you're in a very, very noisy environment. How'd you handle that type of scenario?
To combat background noise, the best technique you can employ is to move the microphone as close to the subject as you can get it. Ms. Greeley.
What about if you're in a room with a lot of echo? Oh, what would you do? Would sound blankets help?
Oh, no, sound blankets would be of no use against echo. To combat echo, move the microphone even closer to your subject. Mr. Charles.
Well, what if you're stuck shooting in a lousy location?
Then you move to a better location.
Well, yeah, but in the real world, sometimes you gotta make do with what you got, so...
To make the best of a bad circumstance, the technique you'd want to employ for that is to move the microphone even closer.
Last time I did that, the actor complained that it was too close.
Then you fire that actor. Hire a better actor and move the microphone even closer to them.
Professor?
Yes?
Isn't it possible to get the microphone too close?
No. All right, So yes, that skit was a tad exaggerated, but we did that in order to really drive home this point. Lots of times when people are booming a shot, they're way further away than they really need to be. You can get that microphone in really, really close and get much better audio, probably a lot closer than you think you should. So get the microphone in as close as you possibly can. And you'll know if it's too close because you'll actually see it in the shot. I mean, literally, the physical restrictions of the frame are going to keep you from getting too very close. Now, it is possible, technically, to get a microphone too close, and then you'll get what we call a proximity effect. An example of that would be this. This would be a microphone too close. So the audio is going to sound a little different, but you'll hear that in your headphones if you're properly monitoring your audio. And besides, you could never get the microphone that close because it would be in the shot. So as a practical matter when you're shooting, it really isn't too easy to get the microphone too close. I mean, when I'm looking at shooting something, a foot is probably too far. If I'm looking at 12 inches away, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I think that might be too far. 2 feet away, you're fired. If you've got to have that microphone in nice and close as you can possibly get it, really riding that frame line to get the best quality audio you can. So let's remember that the goal we're trying to get at is to record a clear, clean recording of our actor's voice and nothing else. Getting the microphone over to the actor as close as you can get him really helps you to do that. Now, why does that work so well? All right, let's imagine you're on a set and, I mean, not even using a boom. Let's say they've committed the cardinal sin, the rookie mistake of mounting the microphone on the camera, right? So when we go to listen to our actor, we have to really turn the volume knobs up in order to be able to hear them across the room. And what do we hear when we do that?
The strangest thing just happened to me on the way back from the ice machine.
We hear a bunch of noise, we hear hiss, we hear echo, we'll hear sounds from outside seeping in. You don't want all that kind of garbage on your soundtrack, right? So how do you get rid of that? You turn the audio potentiometers down. You really lower the audio level, and that will push that noise floor down below the level of where the microphone will hear it. Okay, now you've taken care of the problem of the background noise by turning those audio levels down.
The strangest thing just happened to me on the way back from the ice machine.
But now your actor's too quiet. So the closer you can move that microphone, get it up off the camera and move it closer over to your talent, the louder they'll be. And now we can get a good, clean recording of them without the background noise.
The strangest thing just happened to me on the way back from the ice machine.
Now look, if you're having a conversation with someone, you don't sit all the way across the room, do you? Why would you want your microphone all the way across the room? Get that microphone off the camera and get it as close to your actor as you possibly can. Now sometimes people may worry that if they get the microphone too close, they might lose the spatial perspective of the scene or, cut out too much of the natural reverb of the room. Well, look, it's very simple to add those things back in post. What you cannot do is you cannot remove echo or too much hiss or things like that. If your audio is dirty, it's going to stay dirty. So it's much better to get a good, clean recording. If you need to add a little perspective or you need to add a little reverb, you can do that in post. But getting that microphone close is going to give you the cleanest recording that you can. Now, why does this work so well? In order to explore that, we're going to have to get into a little... Okay, there are two main concepts that you want to understand here in order to understand why moving that microphone closer makes such a difference in how your audio sounds. One is called the signal-to-noise ratio, and the other is the inverse square law. Now, the signal-to-noise ratio, what we're talking about there is two different factors. Your signal, which is what you want to be recording, usually the voice of your actors, and then also the noise, which is the background noise and the hum and the refrigerators and the air conditioners and whatever else is going on. Obviously, you want to have the strongest signal-to-noise ratio that you can possibly get. The more signal that you have, the less noise that's in there, the better and cleaner your audio is going to sound. Combine that with the concept of the inverse square law. Now, the inverse square law basically says that when you double the distance from a sound source or even from a light source, then the intensity of that signal drops. So what basically happens is as the sound energy leaves the speaker's mouth, the further it has to travel, the more it dissipates out. So when you double the distance, that sound energy is covering 4 times as much area. And so the amount of actual volume that gets transmitted, once you factor in reverb and echo and things like that, is cut in half. Kind of akin to if you tried to blow out a candle or a match. If you hold it very close, you have a lot of concentrated breath energy, and it's very easy to blow it out. Whereas if that candle is, 6 feet away or something, it's very difficult to blow that out, because by the time that your breath energy travels all that distance, it's spread out and it's dissipated. Audio undergoes the same type of process. The further away it has to travel, the less energy it has concentrated in one square area. And so the closer you bring that microphone, the more concentrated that energy is, and the louder that voice will be. So if you have a situation where, let's say you had a microphone at 24 feet away from your subject, you're going to get a certain amount of sound energy coming from your subject and hitting that microphone. But if we cut that distance in half, we take that microphone from 24 feet down to 12 feet, now it's going to double the amount of sound energy that hits that microphone. We're going to have twice as strong a signal just by cutting that distance in half. So let's cut it in half again. Let's take it from 12 feet down to 6 feet. Now all of a sudden that sound source is 4 times stronger than it was. Let's cut it again. Let's go to 3 feet. We bring that microphone down to 3 feet. Now our sound source is 8 times louder than it was when it was at 24 feet away. So let's cut it again. Let's go to 18 inches. Now we're talking about a sound source that is 16 times louder than it was. Now the sound source, our signal, has gotten 16 times louder, but what's happened to our noise? It's stayed about the same. The overall general noise level hasn't really moved. The noise consisting of echo or whatever else is going on out there in the environment, that really hasn't changed all that much. So what we've done is we've increased our signal to noise ratio by a factor of 16 times just by moving that microphone closer. So we're at 18 inches away now, right? What if we could move it to 9 inches away? Now it's 32 times louder. Do you see how much those extra inches make a difference? So the closer you can get that microphone, the louder your signal is going to be, and the noise is going to stay about the same. It's going to get to the point where you have to actually start turning down the audio potentiometers because the signal will be so loud. When you turn down those knobs, then the noise is going to fall off the bottom of your waveform entirely, and you're not even going to hear it at all. This same concept of moving the microphone closer is also a primary technique in combating echo. Echo is the nightmare and the plague of independent film audio recording, but it's not that hard to overcome if you understand how it works and how to overcome it. Let me give you an example. I am in an echo chamber here. This room is concrete floor, hard walls, large room, no walls in between it. It's just a big box, a big echo chamber. Yet it probably doesn't sound that echoey because I've got a good proximity to the microphone. If I step just another foot away, now you're probably going to hear dramatically more echo. This is a difference that just another foot and a half of space has made. We've compensated the audio level to make sure that I'm speaking at basically the same level, but by turning up the microphone to compensate, now we're bringing all this echo in. And let's take more of a typical example of where an inexperienced boom man might have the microphone maybe this far away. Now this should be really unacceptable echo levels at this point. So you can tell the room is the room. I am in a very poor acoustically controlled room here, and yet with a little bit of change in the microphone placement, we can get a tremendous improvement in our echo performance. So instead of what a typical indie filmmaker may get, maybe by having the microphone mounted on the camera, I mean, if the microphone was mounted on the camera, we might get, echo like this. This would be incredibly bad. But instead of that, a boom person might hold the microphone here, get a little bit better, but a professional who knows what they're doing and get that microphone close, we might get performance like this. This is the exact same room. The only thing that has changed is the microphone proximity. Proximity to the microphone can help you overcome echo because you can turn down your audio levels, and then that reflected audio, that reflected echo, just falls off the bottom. It's not as prevalent. All right, now I've been telling you that getting the microphone in close is going to solve so many of your audio problems, and it will, but nothing's ever quite that simple, and there are limits. I mean, let's say, for example, you're trying to record an interview in a crowded disco, and the music is thumping, and the DJ's going and everything. I don't care how close you get the microphone, you're never going to overpower that kind of background noise. So you have to try to eliminate as much background noise as you can, and that's why location matters so much. Remember I said there were two things that we're going to teach you. One is getting the microphone close, but the second is Choose a location intelligently based on your audio requirements. Make sure that you choose a location that isn't overpowered with distracting background noises. For example, let's take a look at a sweet little romantic scene.
Thanks for meeting me for lunch. Would you like a little bit more wine?
Please. But I was a little surprised. I mean, I thought you never want to talk to me again.
Well, leaving me at the altar for my brother was rough, but, you know, I've been doing a lot of thinking.
Wait, let me stop you right there, okay? I was wrong. I made a horrible mistake. You were always the one.
Well,
Can you ever forgive me?
Please, forgive? Sure. Forgive him.
Just like that?
Yeah, sure. But you know, maybe I should break up with your sister first.
What?
Now look, we could never use that scene, right? There's way too many distractions. We set up a lovely little scene and we had all these distractions running through there, and granted, they were visual distractions, and again, what we're trying to do is illustrate an audio problem visually. So just like we had visual distractions, we could have had a number of audio distractions going on. For example, we could have had airplanes going through, or dogs barking, or kids playing, or traffic noises, or construction noises. There's so many things that could get in there and mess up our soundtrack. So how do you avoid those? Choose a location which doesn't have those. It's really pretty simple, but it's something that you have to do. If you're shooting near an airport, that's probably not a good location. Even if it was free, even if it looks good inside, if those audio distractions are going to come in and ruin your soundtrack and make it so you can't shoot there, that's not a good decision. If you're setting up right next to a high school and there's a band practicing and there's announcements going off over the loudspeaker, that's not a good location. You have to intelligently manage your locations and pick one that is not going to give you those distractions. Now, sometimes a location will be chosen because the director or the director of photography just falls in love with the place and how it looks, and they think, oh, this is just perfect on camera. Or lots of times the location will be chosen because it's a no-budget shoot and people can get that place for free, right? Well, those really shouldn't be the only criteria used to select whether location is going to be used or not, because if the audio isn't good, if it's not a good location for audio, the shots aren't going to work. And it may end up costing you a lot of money to shoot there. It may take a lot longer time to shoot there. You may have to be dubbing lines just to be able to shoot there. So when you're scouting locations, it's always a good idea to have audio in mind. Think about when you're looking at a location, yes, this is beautiful, but if there's a lot of background noise, or if there's some uncontrollable noise, or if there's a tremendous amount of echo or something like that, maybe it's not an appropriate location. Now, you wouldn't settle for the first actor that you found. You'd settle for the right actor, right? You wouldn't necessarily settle for anything on the first try. You shouldn't settle for the first location. Make sure it's right in all ways. That it looks right, sure, that's great too, but make sure it sounds good too so that you can have a professional sounding production. Now, external noises, those can ruin your shoot. But again, like we said before, that's not the only thing. Bad acoustics can ruin your shots as well. For some insights on acoustics, let's check in with a working audio professional. Matt Gettemeyer has worked on programs that have aired on the Discovery Channel and the History Channel and the E! Entertainment Network, and he's going to share with us what he looks for in choosing a location.
If you find yourself in a room that has parallel walls and really nothing to soak up the sound in between, you're basically going to be in an echo chamber. You're going to have the sound coming back and forth and building up on itself. And echo is one of those things that really just can't be fixed in post. In this room, this is probably the worst area within this house to record in. As I get a little bit further back over here, where I'm actually in a perfect position now of parallel walls that are hard surfaced on both sides, this probably right here is going to give me the most echo of any point in this house. The layout, like in here, I'm basically walking through the echo chamber now. Like I would never try to stage the action in this place right here. This is actually quite a bit better than the horrible location area because at least you still have some things, some angles to try to diffuse some of these echoes. What we have in this room is large furniture. We have nice soft carpeting under our feet. The windows have window treatments. That's going to go ahead and obviously soak up some of the sound that you may normally get reflected directly off a shiny glass window. And then over here, this is something that's not so obvious to everybody as far as it relates to sound, but we have these pocket shelves that are actually extremely deep. And those areas work like a baffle to diffuse echoes and break up the sound, and not to mention the objects that are on the shelf naturally helps to assist in that as well. If you take a look at the rest of this space, it'll help explain why this is such a good location acoustically. There are features within the open space to diffuse sound and reflect it. Essentially, you just want to avoid parallel walls in areas where you have a buildup of sound waves and echo that you can't correct. Since we have these angles and various features, even the pillars, I mean, just all these things, all these unparalleled walls are really helping us out, in addition to all the features that we have within this area, the obvious ones, the things that you'll notice is look how thick this furniture is. I mean, that's an excellent sound absorption. And all the furniture within the room is like that. Even the center coffee table actually features, even though it's leather and that's a shiny surface that's reflective, it's still a pad. And just essentially, this is a perfectly acoustically treated environment, which obviously you could hear the results of that on the soundtrack.
So those are the two things that we keep talking about. Now, as we go on to more advanced lessons, always remember and keep these fundamentals in mind, because they're going to be the bedrock for everything else that we do when recording audio.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
I'm not eating this.
Sorry, hun. That's all we had time to get. Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
No, can't you just take this back and get me a good fresh plate?
Oh, no. No time for that. We're on a deadline. You know, short schedule. We did the best we could. Don't worry, though. We can fix it all in post. You know, make it better. There you go. More coffee? All right.
Oh, I bet they told you I could fix it in post. Clean it up, make it all yummy again?
Well, yeah, they said to...
There you go. That'll be $50.
I'm not eating this.
That's the best I can do. Once it's dirty, it's always dirty. I did the best job I could cleaning it up.
Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Done right the first time.
One of the common phrases you'll hear, especially in an indie production, is, "We'll fix it in post." Sometimes it's said jokingly, but too often it's meant seriously. And as an editor, I'm here to tell you, it's not a great approach. You'll hear an editor brag about how he saved a movie in post, but the last thing an editor really wants to see come across his timeline is bad footage, bad video, or bad audio. If you're thinking to yourself on set, that's okay, we'll fix it in post, it's not a good way of going about it. Your audio is your audio, and once it's bad, it can't be fixed. Besides, it only makes sense. Give your editor as good a footage as possible, and your finished product will be that much better for it. So, a good audio edit begins with recording good, clean audio on set in the first place. You've been following the lessons that Barry and Matt have been teaching on this DVD, and you've been taking all the steps needed to get good, clean audio. So you might think that all you need to do now is assemble the clips on a timeline and everything will be great. Well, it doesn't quite work that way, and to illustrate what I mean, let's take a look at a rough cut.
sunny side up.
I'm not eating this.
Sorry, hun. That's all we had time to get. Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
No, can't you just take this back and get me a good fresh plate?
Oh, no. No time for that. We're on a deadline. You know, short schedule. We did the best we could. Don't worry, though. We can fix it all in post. You know, make it better. More coffee?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Oh, I bet they told you I could fix it in post. Clean it up, make it all yummy again?
Well, yeah, they said to...
There you go. That'll be $50.
I'm not eating this.
That's the best I can do. Once it's dirty, it's always dirty. I did the best job I could cleaning it up.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got stuff to take care of.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Done right the first time.
Okay, that may have been a little bit different from what you were expecting. It may have been a little rougher than what you had in mind. That's because even though you're taking all the steps necessary to get good audio, there are still going to be little differences in between shots and takes, between your actors, perhaps their volume level, between different places in the room, and even if you did something like move furniture around in the room. Again, it's good audio, it's just going to be a little bit different. So it needs to be smoothed out. Your actors might have been speaking at different volume levels. The ambient characteristics of the room may have changed as the temperature changed. Lots of things can happen to make the audio just sound a little bit different. With that in mind, let's take a look at some basics in approaching an audio edit. When you start your edit, you're thinking visually first. You're sequencing the edit for how it looks, how it's paced, how it plays out on the screen. Your audio is usually the last step, but your visual edit is tied to your audio edit, and here's an important way. From a visual point of view, it's not very interesting to have actors in a conversation and then just cut back and forth when each actor says their line.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
I'm not eating this.
Sorry, hun. That's all we had time to get. Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
Can't you just take this back and get me a good fresh plate?
Oh, no. No time for that.
Instead, you usually cut to a reaction shot before an actor is finished with a line, or you start an actor's line when that actor is off screen and then cut to them mid-sentence.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
I'm not eating this.
These are called L cuts and J cuts, because if you look at the video and audio tracks on a timeline, the cuts resemble the letters L and J. This is a bedrock editing technique for visual interest, but it also helps a lot with your audio edit, because if there are differences between the sound you recorded between takes, they'll be so much more apparent if you cut both the video and the audio at the same time.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
I'm not eating this.
Sorry, hun. That's all we had time to get. Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
Can't you just take this back and get me a good fresh plate?
Oh, no. No time for that. We're on a deadline. You know, short schedule.
Cutting between audio takes while the visual take remains the same, any differences in the audio will be less noticeable, and if you apply a crossfade between the audio takes, the transition will be even smoother and hardly noticeable at all. Even better, sometimes you can use the dialogue recorded in one take in place of the audio recorded in another, like in this over-the-shoulder shot. If you can, there will be no break between the audio takes, and no audio difference at all between the visual takes. You can't get any smoother than that.
And get me a good fresh plate?
Oh, no. No time for that. We're on a deadline. You know, short schedule. We did the best we could. Don't worry, though. We can fix it all in post. You know, make it better.
When you start looking at your audio edit, the first thing you're probably going to look at is the levels. You'll usually notice straight away that your actors may not be speaking at the same volume level, so you'll want to even that out. If you've recorded the audio with a nice fat signal like Barry was saying, You should have plenty of volume, and you can lower the volume level on the dialogue with no problem at all. And the cool thing is, when you do that, you'll really see where your low noise floor comes in handy. The more of a difference between the noise and your actor's voice, the more the noise is just going to fall off when you lower the volume level. And listen to this. In this line of dialogue, it's just plain gone, and all I've got is the actor's voice.
I did the best job I could cleaning it up. I did the best job I could cleaning it up.
But you want to make the audio levels even between actors. If they're having a normal conversation, you don't want one louder than the other. Here's where you use one of the most useful tools which comes with most NLEs, the levels meter. Here you can tell exactly how loud your actors' voices are. You don't want to rely on your ear alone. Your ears may not be telling you the whole story. If you watch the levels meter, you be sure that your actors' voices are the same volume level. And besides, your film probably isn't just one scene, right? You may be working in one scene at one time and working on another the next day or the next week. And if you rely on your ears alone, how are you going to know if your volume levels in this scene today are matching the levels in another scene later on? You don't want the dialogue on one to be louder than the other. You want a nice, consistent level throughout your film. Your meters will help you to know you're doing this. Dialogue should normally stay somewhere between -9 and -15 decibels on the meter, peaking at -9 and averaging about -12 for normal conversational dialogue. Some dialogue warrants going higher or lower, but again, watch your levels. If you're high into this yellow range, you're clipping the top of your audio. At -3, you're in danger. For quieter dialogue, lower than -20 and you risk the audience not being able to hear the words clearly. In a perfect situation, once you've evened out your levels, you'll have a dialogue track where all you can hear is your actors' voices at a nice, strong level. But that rarely happens in the real world. You might be able to eliminate all of the background noise for lines where the actor had a particularly strong voice and was in a particularly quiet room, but more likely you'll end up still being able to hear some noise behind the dialogue. Not too much if you've recorded it well, but still a little. Or maybe one of your actors was just quieter than the other and you couldn't drop the noise floor off as much. Or maybe there's an air conditioner sound in one take and not in another. Or maybe, as is often the case, you've got good dialogue and a minimal noise floor and you're crossfading the audio takes, but there's an unwanted noise between lines, like a bird chirping or a dog barking, or something that doesn't ruin your dialogue, but you still need to take it out. You need to make a gap in your soundtrack where that sound was, and the audio track drops to silence there. Or maybe you have an insert shot where there's no sound at all. Either way, you'll have these gaps that you'll be able to hear.
Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
These are all cases where you'll be glad you recorded room tone because now you'll have some ambient sound to fill in the gaps. And you can use it in a number of ways. You can lay it under your whole track to pick up gaps, or you can chop it up and insert it where the gaps exist, being sure to crossfade into and out of the existing clips, of course. When you do, the gaps will disappear, the insert shots will feel like part of the scene, and you'll have a truly smooth dialogue track.
Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
It can be used for other reasons, too. If you do have dialogue where one actor's lines have noise, or if you were able to push the noise floor lower for one actor and not another, then you can use the room tone to fill in the same type of background noise for the other actor.
You were always the one.
Well,
Can you ever forgive me?
Please, forgive? Sure.
You'd lay in the room tone under that actor's lines only. Or if you lay a bed of room tone under the whole scene, you drop the volume of the room tone under the dialogue that has the noise. If you don't, you'll still have the same uneven noise in the scene because the noise will be twice as loud in that actor's dialogue.
You were always the one.
Well,
Can you ever forgive me?
Please, forgive? Sure.
You were always the one.
Well,
Can you ever forgive me?
Please, forgive? Sure.
You can also use the room tone creatively. You might find that even if you were able to eliminate all of the background noise, the audio might not sound quite true to life. Because even though we go through a whole day never noticing the ambient tone of the rooms we're in, if it were suddenly gone, we'd definitely notice.
Not bad.
Thank you, sir.
You can't hear me.
Thank you, sir.
I said you can't hear me.
Sir? Sir,
How do you expect to record great audio if you're not even monitoring your audio?
Thank you, sir!
I said you can't hear me?
Sir? Sir,
How do you expect to record great audio if you're not even monitoring your audio?
So you can use the room tone to fill in the silence, but this way you're in complete control. You add as much or as little as you want, and you're not at the mercy of the noise in the recording. Hopefully now you'll be able to build a more complete soundtrack, but you still might have some problems with different kinds of noise. Now I can't stress enough, if you don't take care to record your audio well, it can't be fixed in post. Bad audio will always be bad, but if you have some minor issues, there are a few software tools that you may be able to use to help alleviate them. There is noise removal software, and some even available for free. Usually it works by sampling a section of noise in your audio and then removing those frequencies from the whole clip. Cheap software is pretty indiscriminate about it, and it can make your dialogue sound squeaky or robotic. Very expensive software, though it works a lot better, still has to eliminate parts of the sound you want to keep, and it's just that, expensive. So it's not an ideal solution. You never ever want to rely on it. In your NLE, a couple of tools which might help are equalizers and noise gates. A noise gate works by eliminating all sounds below a certain volume level, and you can set some parameters so that it works more like a filter, letting some good stuff through and keeping bad stuff out, and not just like a lid. This might help with some low-volume wind noise or something like that, but I can't stress enough the word help. Remember, if your dialogue level drops and is at the same level as the noise you're eliminating, you'll lose that part of the dialogue, and you'll usually hear the noise at least a little during the peaks of your dialogue. You can use EQ to lower or eliminate specific frequencies of sound, so it's a more surgical tool. You can lower the volume on the lower end of the spectrum and maybe get rid of a low bassy noise, maybe a 60 Hz hum or low rumble. You can also use it at the higher end to eliminate hiss or something very high-pitched. But again, you run the risk of eliminating part of your dialogue, and this time it's not about volume levels. The human voice covers a huge range of frequencies that cover most of the audible spectrum. If you're eliminating a noise at a certain frequency or range of frequencies, you'll be eliminating the parts of the voice which are at those frequencies too. If you eliminate too much bass, a voice might sound tinny like it's through a cheap speaker. If you eliminate too much treble, the voice can sound muffled like you're listening to it from a different room. These may be great effects for certain situations, but for normal dialogue, it's definitely not what you want. And keep in mind, if you're dealing with echo, there's no way to remove that in post. There's no magic remove echo filter button. If you've got echo in your recording, it's there to stay. Once you've got your dialogue where you need it to be, you can start to build that more complete soundtrack. This will include adding sound effects and other ambient sounds, and of course, music. We keep stressing that the goal for location audio is that you want to record your actors' voices and nothing else. This means that you'll add in all the other sounds later. Footsteps, pouring coffee, whatever else is appropriate. Now, if you're shooting in a place like this diner and you know you're going to need certain sounds, like the sizzling grill, there's no reason why you can't record that sound for Foley, but you don't do it while you're recording the dialogue.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
The room should be as close to silent as possible when you're doing that. After you get your dialogue track down, then you add in all the other sound effects. Footsteps, the coffee being poured, people typing at computers, phones ringing, radios playing, whatever's appropriate. You can record it yourself, or you can use a sound effects library. Either way, you're keeping the sound effects separate from the dialogue recording. This also means, of course, that even in a scene like this one, where you have extras conversing in the background, they're actually miming the words but aren't making any sounds.
Don't worry though, they can clean this all up in post. You know, make it better.
But you'll want to add in those sounds that they would be making. You've laid room tone, but often a scene will warrant or even require that you add more ambiance to it, and in this case we're in a busy diner. If you were in a real diner, you'd hear people talking and things being clanked around and all sorts of stuff, so we'll want to make sure it sounds like the real thing by adding in some crowd walla. If we didn't have that kind of ambiance, the scene would sound more dead, like this.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
I'm not eating this.
Sorry, hun. That's all we had time to get. Maybe you can take it over there and see if they can clean it up.
No, can't you just take this back and get me a good fresh plate?
Oh, no. No time for that. We're on a deadline. You know, short schedule. We did the best we could. Don't worry, though. We can fix it all in post. You know, make it better.
Now that's the same segment you saw before, but the feel of it is totally wrong for what's going on in the scene. You don't really buy that this waitress is in a hurry to do her job if it doesn't seem like there's a crowd in the room. The background noise is audio set dressing. It helps set the tone of the scene.
There you go, love. 2 eggs, sunny side up.
Also, if you have a little bit of a stray sound, like an echo on a single word of dialogue that you can't get rid of, the ambient sound can help to mask it. But again, I'd point out here that clean, good dialogue recording allows you much more control over your soundtrack. You start with the dialogue all by itself, and then any other sounds in the scene are all sounds that you want to be there. This is especially important for delivering your film to a distributor. Often, a distributor will want you to give them what's called a music and effects track, or an M&E track. This is a soundtrack which includes all of the sound effects and music from the film, but no dialogue. This is so that dubbing into other languages will be possible. For that reason, you need to have your dialogue as clean as possible so it can be completely separated from all the other sounds in the soundtrack. Now, I've been stressing that you can't fix it in post. And you heard Barry explain why it's usually not a good idea to do looping for your dialogue. But there are a few techniques that you can use with an eye toward post-production if you plan well enough ahead and understand that these are exceptions to the rule. If you're in a situation where you just can't get the microphone close enough to overcome the background noise, and you can't find any other way to alleviate the problem, you can still do a couple of things. You can record what's called wild dialogue. It's dialogue recorded on set without the visual recording, or if there is a visual recording too, as is more likely the case, it's not really intended to go with that visual. That line will be put in later to go with a different visual. This can be useful for a wide shot where matching your actor's lips isn't necessary, or it can be put in when the actor is off screen and you can't see the actor's face. In that respect, it's kind of like looping, but it's done more the right way. It's in the same location as the scene, and the actor is still in the moment of the scene and can deliver a consistent performance, especially since they're not concentrating on matching lip movements and can give full attention to the performance. Now, if a scene requires that you have to have the lip sync, but you still can't get that microphone close enough without dipping into the frame, then you should consider dipping it into the frame. What I mean is this. You can lock down the camera for the shot. The first thing you'll do is shoot a plate in the background for the full length of the shot. You might want to have the actors in place so that any shadows in the scene are consistent, but you don't want moving shadows either, so keep them still. Then, drop the microphone into the frame and shoot the scene.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
You planning on going outside with that, Chief?
Do you know what this is? It's a shotgun. I can use this for everything.
What you'll be able to do later is take your shot and then cut the microphone out of the frame. Then you'll fill in the frame with your background plate, making a complete picture without the microphone in it. You can do this in your NLE if it lets you cut out selected parts of the frame, or you can do it in effects programs like After Effects. It's a fix that you do in post, but it's not the lazy way out. It's something you do to get the good audio on location. As you can see, with planning, the visual can be fixed, but if the audio is bad, it can't be. You won't always be able to do either of these things. But if the conditions are right and you're able to utilize these techniques, they can allow you to get the dialogue you need on set where you should be getting it. So these are some tips and techniques that you can use to build a great soundtrack in post. Obviously, there are a lot of tools and tricks that professional sound editors use to build a really sweet soundtrack, and those are well beyond the scope of this DVD. But you always want to begin with good audio recorded on set. An editor can't fix it in post, and if you give your editor bad sound, it may be a long time before you actually see a finished product. A great audio edit begins on set.
Now, I hope we've impressed upon you just how important audio is and how it doesn't take necessarily that much effort to get great quality audio. Now, just never forget the two things that we've been teaching you: getting the microphone closer and choosing a great location. With those two techniques, that'll get you maybe about 80% of the way towards having great audio, which could be a huge increase over, if you remember in our opening segment, the bad audio that so many indie filmmakers end up with. Now, I've been talking about this 80% number, and that comes from what we call the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your results frequently come from 20% of your efforts, and those last 20% of your results takes 80% of your efforts. So in the bang for the buck ratio, focusing on that 20% of the efforts that's going to give you 80% of the results seems like a very efficient way to go. And focusing your energy on those two things can get you to that 80% level where you've got pretty darn good audio. That last 20%, okay, that comes from better equipment and better techniques and things like that. And that'll come and you'll learn those things. If I had to impress on you one key tactic to get the best quality audio, that would be hire a professional sound person. That's going to be somebody who has the experience, who has the equipment, who has the expertise to be able to make the best of just about any audio circumstance that you're going to run into. And the other great thing about having a dedicated audio person is, you know, if you're in a no-budget or low-budget situation, you're probably going to be handling multiple jobs yourself. You may be the director and the producer and the camera operator and the sound guy. If you're spreading yourself that thin, each job is probably not going to be done to its best. Whereas if you have a dedicated audio person, you can be assured, if you've got a good person in place, that you're going to get great quality audio. And that's something you don't even have to think about anymore because somebody is watching that and monitoring that. But for those who maybe can't afford to hire a dedicated audio person, or for those of you out there who may want to become a dedicated audio person, the knowledge that we've tried to give you in this disc should get you a long way towards doing great audio for your film and video productions.